In this bulletin, the federal government announces a major defence upgrade. The US promises to stand by Ukraine, and Sydney FC sacks its coach. On SBS Radio, I'm Zara Zaher. Defence Minister David Johnston has defended the federal government's decision to spend more than $12 billion upgrading Australia's Air Force capabilities with a new fleet of F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. The purchase of 58 fighters will take the Australian F-35 fleet to 72 by 2020. The fighter program will see $1.6 billion spent on new facilities at Royal Australian Air Force bases at Williamstown in New South Wales and Tyndall in the Northern Territory. Senator Johnson says the purchase has been under consideration since 2002 and has already been budgeted for.
Defence has been factoring in an amount on an annual basis into each budget to accommodate this expenditure. There is no new money in this spend. So we have planned this out, and great tribute to Defence, planned this out so that this is not a new policy proposal. The money is on the table. It has been accounted for. We're going forward with the program.
The Federal Health Minister has indicated wealthy Australians could soon be forced to pay to see the doctor. The comments come amid speculation the Abbott government plans to introduce a $6 co-payment for visits to general practitioners. Health Minister Peter Dutton says low-income earners will still be able to see the doctor for free.
We will take care of those that can't take care of themselves. But at the same time, people on incomes like mine or a reporter on $300,000 or $400,000 a year, should we expect to go to the doctor for free? That's a reasonable question to ask.
There is also speculation the federal government will phase out GP super clinics, causing the federal opposition to accuse the government of preparing to break a number of health-related election promises. Speaking at the opening of the Wyndham Vale GP super clinic in Melbourne, opposition leader Bill Shorten said voters should expect more attacks on the health system.
Let us be very clear, a GP tax is the thin edge of the wedge. It will lead, if the Abbott government can break its promise to introduce a tax, it can certainly break its promise to not increase the tax. We will see people on fixed incomes, self-funded retirees, people over 55, poorer people will be unfairly hit by the GP tax. It is a bad idea.
The United States is deploying about 600 troops to Poland and the Baltics to underscore its commitment to NATO allies amid tensions with Russia over the crisis in Ukraine. The Pentagon says a company of 150 US soldiers will arrive in Poland tonight, and roughly 450 troops are due in Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia in coming days. Rear Admiral John Kirby says since Russia's aggression in the Ukraine and annexation of Crimea, the US has been looking to reassure its allies in the region.
It's a very tangible representation of our commitment to our security obligations in Europe. If there's a message to Moscow, it is the same exact message, that we take our obligations very, very seriously on the continent of Europe.
It comes as the US Vice President Joe Biden reassures Ukraine that the US will help it resist what he calls a Russian takeover. He offered the country a new US $50 million aid package, reiterating that the US does not recognize Russia's annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in March. Refugee advocates have dismissed the Immigration Minister Scott Morrison's suggestion that the number of Sri Lankans that Australia is taking in under its migration programs means there's no need for others to travel to Australia by boat. Mr Morrison's told the joint working party between Australia and Sri Lanka on people smuggling and transnational crime that the number of Sri Lankans becoming Australians has reached record levels. He says that proves Sri Lankans don't have to use what he calls illegal means, such as a boat, to get to Australia and seek asylum to take up residence here. But Ian Rintoul from the Refugee Action Coalition says migrants from Sri Lanka to Australia are mostly from more privileged sections of society and are not those who need protection.
It's just perpetuating the myth that somehow if there is a victim of persecution, they can go to the Australian Embassy or access the UNHCR and get safety or protection in that way. That's just not feasible. It's not possible. And the people who are being persecuted, by and large, they are the dispossessed Tamils in the north, which is effectively under military occupation. They simply don't have the means to access skilled migration channels to get from Sri Lanka.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has backed a resolution calling for an inquiry into alleged rights abuses in the final stages of Sri Lanka's civil war. But the Sri Lankan government has rejected the move as politically motivated. The confirmed death toll from the South Korean ferry disaster has risen to 135, but nearly 170 people are still missing. The victims are overwhelmingly students of a single high school in Ansan near Seoul. More than 3/4 of the 323 students are dead or missing, while nearly 2/3 of the other 153 people on board the ferry when it sank 1 week ago survived. South Korean Coast Guard official Ko Mi-young-suk says emergency crews are drawing upon the latest technology in their search efforts.
We're planning to mobilise a multi-legged underwater robot and a side-scan sonar. This means that we will mobilise various equipment and methods as much as we can, if it is going to help with the rescue operation.
Malaysia's Navy chief has called the search for MH370 the most difficult search operation in human history. Speaking at the 14th Western Pacific Naval Symposium, Admiral Abdul Aziz bin Haji Jafar says the incident has touched all Malaysians deeply and they still hold hope of finding the plane. The massive international search and rescue effort for any physical evidence of the plane's wreckage, now in its 7th week, has so far proved fruitless. The current underwater search has been narrowed to a circular area with a radius of 10 kilometres around the location, in which one of 4 pings believed to have come from the black box recorders was detected on April 8. Chief of the Royal Australian Navy, Vice Admiral R.J. Griggs, says the remoteness of the area means the search has had to rely on a number of different technologies.
From a tactical level, traditional line-of-sight communications was clearly not an option. And there was a heavy reliance on satellite communications.
Australia's longest-serving independent senator, Brian Harradine, has been farewelled at a funeral in Hobart. Mr Harradine, who died last week at the age of 79, held a Tasmanian Senate seat for 30 years. He played a key role in negotiating the passage of a number of bills through the Senate, including the sale of Telstra and the WIC native title amendments under the Howard government. Former Prime Minister John Howard attended Mr Harradine's funeral and has praised his contribution to public life.
Brian Harradine was a just man and he identified with principles and he stuck to them. He never deviated. And he fought hard for Tasmania, I can assure you of that, and he was pretty effective as a negotiator for Tasmania. But that was his job and that was his obligation to the people who sent him to Parliament.
To sport, and Sydney FC has sacked coach Frank Farina just days after the Sky Blues were eliminated from the 2013-2014 final series. In a brief statement, the club confirmed that the board decided to end Frank Farina's coaching contract following the conclusion of Sydney FC's A-League season. The club will now look to appoint a new coach with Graham Arnold, who is reported to be in talks with Newcastle Jets, a possible replacement. Sky Blues marquee man Alessandro Del Piero has also been touted as a possible coach. And now a look at tomorrow's weather. In Perth, cloudy and 26. Adelaide, a morning shower or 2 and 20. For Melbourne, showers and 17. Hobart, morning showers and 15. Canberra, mostly sunny and 20. Wollongong, a late shower or 2 and 27. In Sydney and Newcastle, mostly sunny and 29. For Brisbane, sunny and 29. Cairns, a few showers and 30. And in Darwin, a possible afternoon shower and 33. And that's the latest from the SBS Radio Newsroom.